So we will call the meeting to order at 7:01.
We have two guests. Mickey is called into, but she's staff. And Becky has called in, but she is also staff. At least unless this is a different Becky.
All right. So I just want to say one opening comment. There's a lot of people have been really frustrated, and there's a lot of issues currently that are urgent. And so many so that it feel, from my perspective, from what I hear from people, it's they feel that they're not being heard or that we're not working through them fast enough. I would like to just stress that we are, as a board, hearing some of them for the first time in the past couple weeks. As always, we need to, before we make any sort of a decision, we need to have all the information. And if that takes a little bit more time, we just want to make sure we have informed decisions before we vote on anything. So just want to say thank you to Karine and all of the administration, because they've been working through a lot of stuff. Most of it behind the scenes that nobody knows about. And what it takes to run the school on top of budget season. So with that, I would like to draw attention to the consent of minutes. We have 2 minutes, 2 sets of minutes from December 7th, the public and the non-public. Do I have a motion for someone to?
Can I move them together?
Yes, they're going to be moved.
I will second that.
Consent of minutes.
There you go.
So Glenshaw Glass.
Glenshaw Glass, do we have any changes or? All right, all in favor of the minutes as written? Okay, so it's unanimous. For those not present here, Vince is not here actually, so that's the one thing just to register. So it's a 6-0 vote. He's not, Roger's not here either, so we're recording for Roger.
Oh, we're recording to whom? Transcribe later?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just checking.
So, okay, and so with that, I will turn it over to Corinne.
Okay, so progress on technology coordinator is on here. So I want to go back from the last meeting. I had made a recommendation about the job description for a tech specialist. We've done a lot of comparison between David and myself and other districts. And I did a little bit of research and looking at where Jeff had outlined towards working towards this position, and this new job description really is exactly what was intended in August. There's some terms that are a little different because they're moving more into the Google family versus Microsoft or Mac. I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but the job description is good. I would urge you to, approve this job description, and I would like to recommend, based on the New Hampshire CTO Council, New Hampshire IT staff salary surveys, to put down a salary range of 50 to 55,000. Now, last week, was it last week we met? Okay. I had recommended 55 based on the descriptors in the staff salary survey, because there were different components or types of technology staff throughout the state, but thought with the job description that is here, it was best to go with a range, because some schools have job descriptions that have minimum qualifications. And so you want to be able to have the flexibility to pay someone to do the technology work. And there is a need for someone on staff to do district and school entirely. And so that if you approve a job description with a salary range of 50 to 55, now you really have something substantial to move the work that is needed forward. Next thing, if that job description were approved, then here's a couple potential scenarios. You absolutely have to post it. So you could have an individual apply for it, but you do not want to add an FTE because there's no funding for this position for this year. However, if you had someone who wanted to contract their services within the staff environment, you would be accommodating the under 50 and getting what you wanted in the tech position. One scenario. The cost of any staff member includes benefits. So if a staff member didn't, would reside from that, the district would be saving in the benefits, which we haven't compared the dollars to dollars yet. But we could transition that resource into the balance of the salary that might be selected for that person, and then we'd be good the rest of the year. Still would like to put some of this in ESSER grants. I won't do that till Monday or Tuesday. There's been so much, as you can imagine. But I was planning to be here Monday and Tuesday, but I got to get grants in so they can get approved, because I want you to be able to access the money. And these are some of the expenses that can go there, just like the ESSER funds and the Title IV funds. But unless I really spend a lot of time, I've been collecting information from the administrative team, from the technology people, from building and ground. So I have a pretty good file of things that I need to kind of work through to get them in there. So that's my goal, to move things so that we can start replacing some of the local budget with grant funding so that we can balance that. But that's a process, and it takes quite a few weeks to get to there. The other option obviously is to make a decision whether this position is in the next school year budget, which we have put in 55,000 in the budget for the next school year. So those are the scenarios. The other piece is, if you're not comfortable with that, David and I talked today, and he suggested maybe tabling the item until all your questions get answered, and I can facilitate, or David can set up a time next week that if you have specific questions, that he can address them all, because he's got that experience in so many different districts in this work. So that is also an option to you. I don't want you to feel pressured, but I want to make sure that you're clear on what you need to know. And so that's an offer that David made, so that you know where we're going there. So that's pretty much my update. I have reached out to Hanover and Lebanon and Plainfield about contracted services in general, whatever they may be. Plainfield is very interested in doing some joint hiring. It may be a specialty, it may be, who knows? We haven't gotten to the details, but I just want you to know that I've moved that along. Haven't heard from Hanover, Lebanon yet, so if I don't hear in a week, I'll reach back out. So those things are in motion as we start moving this budget through its cycle, and it's a big egg. But I want you to have as much information as you can, so you can decide what's the right fit. Right?
So to move it forward, to get it discussed, can I move accepting your proposal to, it sounds like you want to do it as a contracted position?
No, not yet. I mean, first thing is the job description
All right, so
with the salary
move-
range. That would
all
be
right,
the first
To
thing,
move to approve the job description at the salary range that you discussed,
which was 50 to
50 to
55.
55, is so that we can get it on the table and decide to move it forward or not move it forward.
Right.
In a second.
Second.
Okay.
There you go. So at least there.
Have we all seen the job description in question?
I hope so, but I can't be sure of that. So much has transpired. I know we sent it out maybe once or twice,
Yeah, it's been out for.
but I can't be sure of that, Hayes.
Is that the one that's in the technology plan?
Yes,
It's in the technology plan, so it's called tech specialist and systems manager. I mean, it's a tech coordinator, it's a tech specialist, whatever you want to call
it
it.
was also done last spring. too.
Yes, it had been begun sooner.
It had begun.
Yeah,
a
But
long
that
time
was the
ago.
one that we saw that was a 0.5. That one you're
No, the other, there
describing.
was another one.
There was one recommended for a 1.0.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and Jeff brought that
Yeah.
forward.
That one we hired for already, though.
No, we have not.
We
We
never
have the
did.
person doing, but we didn't approve the position shift.
Right.
I thought we had a vote in June on that.
Well, it might have been on the
Okay.
library media and tech integrator.
what
So the
you're-
recommendation from June was a 0.5 in a director, a 1.0 in a tech specialist, and having a 0.5 added to a library media. So then you had a 1.0, which the person was library media and tech integrator. If I, yeah. So it was 2.5 positions. And so the library media tech integrator was hired, and the 0.5 was contracted out for directorship. So it still left this on-site daily position. So that's where it got hung up, I think.
Is there any suggestion? I mean, I see in this current job description, it says bachelor's degree, at least 1 year of experience in the field.
Could you forward that to everyone? I don't know that we've all,
It's on the,
I
it's on the
can't.
drive.
I've seen it. I mean, but.
I actually can't because
It was,
it's not only
Downloaded
Becky,
it.
it's
It was sent to us on the 5th of
I can
December.
share.
We can go make a copy on the copier. That's about what I can contribute.
I can
I
share.
can
it.
I can forward an email that has the link. Or, well, okay, I can do that.
It's in the technology plan, which is
It's hard to
in
I had it pulled up
the
at one
board
point.
reference
I just
assessment
never
folder.
finished
Who
it.
needs it?
As
Hayes?
far as.
Hayes needs it.
executive
But it's
office.
on the school board
Yes,
folder,
yes.
right?
It's in there.
Okay, but it's just not in the documents for this meeting.
It's
That's
not in the
only-
documents
okay.
for this meeting because I don't own it and I can't
Yeah.
actually I can't even copy and paste it, any pieces of it.
Yeah. It was originally called technology coordinator, so I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes a
it's
difference.
originally drafted in August.
Title, but that's what the plan was in August.
So I'm curious with regards to qualifications, is there any push or need for looking at someone who has like a computer and IT background? Is that something that's recommended or?
From what I
Like an
know, of
IT
IT staff,
degree.
it's all over the place. I mean, I looked at one today, it was a minimum associate's degree in either computer science or technology. A lot of schools will have some minimum requirements, and preferred requirements, but they have certifications and I don't know the right terms, but Google Plus or the Google Land stuff or networking or, you know, again, I don't have the right terminology, but there are different certifications that that people who are interested in being technology support staff in schools, they can take those trainings, you know, and get certificates for them. It's not necessarily a degree. And the state licensing really doesn't lend itself towards a tech specialist. It's more for somebody in a career technical ed program that would get certified in tech ed or computer science programming. So they check all that.
Do you have any other questions or comments or desire to wait on it?
I have one comment, if that's all right,
Sure.
as a guest on the school board. One of the things, if you take the time to read the job description, the qualifications when you interview somebody is what you're looking for. There are no real, if you want to know what happens on a Google admin, because this school is run by your Google admin. Where that is something that you have to have experience in. And if you have the experience, you can go get your Google admin certification. But that's what you do when you interview somebody. You say, what qualifications do you have? But the number one thing is you have to look at the job description. And I got up early this morning and I looked at that job description for the 30th time. And it is a good job description for any school that is a Google school. We are a Google school. We have Chromebooks. We don't have Microsoft. We don't need Microsoft. So you have to look at what is running the school. And I think once you read the job description, that's what I think needs to be discussed, if that helps. And certainly when you go to the interview process, you say, what experiences do you have to match the job description you're asking for? If that helps. Yeah.
Would it be okay if I asked a quick clarification question that I can put in the notes that I'm taking for the staff? Corinne, you said something about sharing the job description. I lost that a little bit.
That's future. You're talking about talking to other districts about potential
Oh.
future shared
Oh, I'm
positions.
talking
It's not now.
Yeah, other
It's not about
districts
the
on
tech.
what kind of services can be shared. For example, if we only need a certain employee for a 0.5, is there another district that can use a
Okay.
0.5, so that together, you know, one district hires the person so they have a full-time job and the other district buys the service from them.
Right. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Not specific to technology, but in general.
So my question was, if we choose to go the contracted route, remind me, is this something we would put an RFP out for every year? And this is a question in general, and that goes toward every contracted position that we have.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, because I was gonna say, I really don't know that answer. So when you go out for an RFP for a bid, that has to be done annually?
Yeah.
Okay, so if a job is posted, I'm kind of talking out loud, and someone who wants to sell you their services, because they're an LLC, they're an independent, does it then still have to go out and be posted every year? Or once you fill that position, if you're happy with the services, you can continue the services?
We have to post it every year.
I would like to, the only thing I would like to say to that is that, having worked in other school districts, if you have a trusted contracted person, as an example, let's say you have an accountant that does a good job for you, and you, in the other districts I've worked in, once you have a trusted employee, that does not have to go out for RFP every year, but I think it depends on the school board policies that this school board has decided on. But I know for a fact that other school districts do not require an RFP every year if that position's already been filled and you don't need to go out. Go ahead.
Just our purchasing policy requires anything that you spend over $10,000 to go out to bid. So, and that's an annual basis, so.
Okay. And that-
Yeah, and in this, and we do have subcontractors in the building that we post it and then we take the bids and then award the bid. And we have people that come
Wow.
back over time.
Yeah.
So that is what we do, because of our purchasing policy.
And the purchasing policy applies to services and printers. Like it applies to anything, widgets and
Yeah, yeah.
people and.
Over 10,000.
And I mean, the
It's a really
thought
expensive widget.
of the contracted part is because the district, and I think you're gonna discuss this in the budget time, is gonna want to stay under the 50 employee. And so we're turning over every stone to try to see how can we meet that threshold in creative ways. So I don't have the answer, but that's why I throw that out as an option. It may not be, may just post the job, hire, qualified person and done with it. Then they're an employee. So where else in the pool of employees can we shave 0.5?
This is what I was wondering,
So
is it fair? I mean, it may be a stopgap measure for this year, but what is fair to the employee who's providing a full-time service? It sounds a little close to the edge of
Yeah.
That's why.
playing with what's a contractor versus
Yeah.
a real
Well, it depends on
employee.
It
whether
is,
they're-
it is. That's why I throw it all out there.
I feel like it sounds like a little not legal, right? Because it's,
It depends on how it's.
if the job description never changes.
Right, but
like a
it
contracted
depends on the
service.
how it's being overseen and supervised in employment law. It really, there is differences, and so you have to be careful on how it's designed and how it's overseen. Not every role could be a contracted role. This could potentially be a contracted role.
But if she has no say over her
Well, that's.
place, where she works, when she works, like
Yeah,
as having been a contractor myself in a situation where I thought, this is a bit of a gray area.
Yeah, it may be,
Well, we
it may
would have
not
to
be
have
the
it
way to
reviewed
go for
legally.
this position,
Right,
but
That's why
it's
she's
because
saying
it's
don't
new
make-
now, so let's take the opportunity
to
to
look at it.
say, well, what's gonna work so we can meet the tenets of the 50, and can we do it this year? Because there's no money in the budget to do it yet this year, but that was a way to be able to transition local funding to be able to fund it for this year. Otherwise, you're posting it for next school year because it's in the budget.
Right.
So just giving you some options. I don't have the answer. I mean, what would be the right thing to do. You can decide that and we'll certainly
We
carry
could
that
probably
out.
get a legal review to understand and make sure.
We may not get any type of a service applied for it either, so.
I think there's one other thing to think about, and I think it goes back to the job description. The media specialist tech integrator position is an employee. That is an incredibly important position for the school, because that is the person that integrates all the technology in the classroom, and she or he is also the media specialist. If this school has to have somebody at the level of a tech specialist to run everything. It is just that clear. And so to me, the most important thing to think about as we talk about what this position should be is, it is as important to have a good tech specialist to run a school as it is to have a good media specialist or to have a good teacher. Because without that person, what's going to happen? That's what I keep wondering. What's going to happen if you don't have a good tech specialist to run the school? You've got the website, you've got the Google admin, you've got all of the inventory, you've got to take care of tech tickets. I can't do that as a tech director. My job is limited. And right now, as soon as I finish Power School integration, I see my job backing out to something totally different. And I don't mind that as a contracted person. Next year, I think my position will be very, very limited. You guys called me in for budget. You called me in for issues with Power School, but that's it. I just oversee the higher level things or any issues with the network, like we've had this year, as I discussed last time I was here. But somehow it seems like we're missing sometimes when we talk about this position, that it's not as critical as the teacher's position.
Oh, it's terribly.
And it is as critical as any teacher
I'm
in the
confused
school.
though. I don't think any of
Okay.
us are, it's
Yeah.
Well, I
really
just-
strange. This happened at the last meeting and it's happening again.
Well,
I think all of us are in agreement
Okay.
that this position is
position-
important. It's how to do it.
Well,
I don't think
Right.
we need to be lectured or
Oh,
right.
preached to about how important it is when we all agree
all right,
it's
then
important.
Then
So
I
I think we
apologize.
contract other positions like speech and OT, thank you, in the school. So I'll agree. I think that we're just trying to figure out the constructs here of it. And my thought is that I'm concerned that, while we might be a Google school right now, we're also at a transition point with future administration. And I don't know where we're going with tech in the school. I like the idea of proceeding with the contracted positions. I think that it does two things. It helps us with our overall numbers and it leaves us a little more flexible for decision-making that the next administration might have if they want to create and make it a permanent position, a hired position. But it leaves things a bit more flexible. I'm also, and I didn't know we would necessarily be voting on anything tonight because I saw the agenda changed to inform. I wouldn't mind having more time with the job description, only in that the information that I have seen out there, and I haven't done like pointed research because I didn't know we'd be voting on anything. But I do feel that some level of an academic degree in this field, which is really specialized to have a broad view of technology, would be wise for this school, rather than trained in something very specific. That's what I feel would be safe moving forward for our school. And if we're not ready to do that now, then again, proceeding with something in a contracted fashion would allow our future administration the ability to make those decisions.
Anybody else? Jen, anything? Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I see Hayes's point, other than, Like, it just sounds like a position that you want continuity in. And for that reason, not contracting it makes sense, because you're more likely, to get that retention. And then also, I guess just to put out there, I think Karina already sort of touched on this, but the 50 to 55K salary is for a person who's hired on. If we actually contracted it, we would, you have to inflate the salary because that person's responsible for all of their FICA. They're not gonna get healthcare. So there's, some give and take there. But at the same time, I understand, like, I think we need to be careful about that number 50. And that's, this person, we already have a 1.0, right? Doing this job today, so we wouldn't necessarily shift we wouldn't necessarily shift the numbers. I'm not sure that this is where the -1 should come from, I guess, for my point.
But right
Yes.
now, this employee isn't getting what she's promised.
Well, I don't remember that, because I remember
It
then,
was-
I remember the advocacy from the DA at the time was, we have a paraprofessional who just needs to be increased to 1.0. He or she was at 0.5.
I think there was more conversation than that in my recollection.
Not at
because
the board level.
part of it on the board conversation from the DA was because the budget didn't build it, getting grant funding to ensure that this position was adequately compensated. There was a shift to full-time from part-time, and the objective that got dropped because the DA left was to get the remainder of the funding for that position from,
Well, it sounds
I
like
think
Karina's
there's
That's
working
not how I
documentation.
remember it. How I remember
But it sounds
was-
like Korean's working on that.
Yeah.
That's how she led it in her superintendent's
Right, well, that's how I
report.
was
She
trying to
needs to
say that.
focus on the grants in order to get the grants.
to adequately fund the position that is currently underfunded.
Elizabeth, I'm wondering if that
Well,
took
the new
place at a
position
higher
has to be
level
posted.
conversation.
Well, I know the
because-
position has to get posted, like a
Yeah.
lot of things got dropped when
Yeah.
the
Right.
DA left.
I
So there's a
really don't
motion
think
on
we
the
had a
table,
school
right?
board wide
Right, there's a
conversation
motion on the table.
There is a motion on the table. So the motion to repeat is to approve the job description as presented with a salary of 50 to 55,000. I've heard one request to table it for now, so for more research.
I'd like to call the vote. I think we got to keep moving forward. We're in the middle
Can
and
we-
we've got,
But if we approve the job description, that's a piece, and then there's the piece of how to execute. So that may be where maybe the questions are coming
Yeah, the
from.
funding is the holdup for
I
this year.
think that's what.
Well, so I'm asking about the job description, because at this point, that is the request on the table by one of our board members, so.
But was the motion also to, I thought,
It was just for the job
It was the job
description at
description.
that salary.
at
that
that level.
but so that's my question. I'm just piggybacking on what Jen said. If you're talking about making somebody whole and you've got a contracted piece, contractors don't get benefits, so you have to structure that payment differently versus an employee.
Yeah, I think the job description needs to say, if this is a hire for contracted services, or if this is a hire to be an employee of the school district. So the two go hand in hand, I think.
But
So
unless you
like-
do it differently, if you were gonna RFP, you write an RFP that's really specific and it wouldn't be a job description. They're two completely different things. I mean, an RFP is like a scope of work, et cetera, of a very targeted thing. And job description is that this is gonna be part of your framework of the employees that are in your district. And it just becomes part of that, all the other job descriptions that go with it.
Okay, so then, I don't know, then we don't need to specify, and then when you offer the job to somebody, I guess then you need to know.
Well, you're not there yet.
Well, I know, but I think Jan's saying if you go to contract, we just need a specific list of items. And if we
Right,
go to
but I
job.
think
we need-
that
if
the
we do
beauty of
regular,
this
it's a
job
position.
description, it gives all the deliverables, how it's drafted and written can be
So it
shifted.
could go either way.
I think it sounds like you would agree that it's a full-time position in the next budget. It's
Mhm.
more the current, if there's any action done currently, because there's no funding. I think that's what I'm understanding from you, right? You support the position
Correct.
for the next budget cycle on staff, with the current. Yeah, that's where the.
And
Bill,
I'll
you
ask
have a-
you
Go ahead, Liz.
question, within the salary range you came up, the 50 to 55.
Yep.
Is, was that for a contracted position? Was that for
It was,
a benefited position? I guess because if we're drawing a distinction between the amounts, that would make a difference.
I took it off. David had done some research on the New Hampshire staff salary surveys around the state for IT staff. And they give an average range and a typical list of duties, very brief. It goes everywhere from a tech director to a coordinator, to a systems administrator, to a database SIS specialist, to a help desk, end user support. So end user support average salary is on $46,000, and this is this year, this current. And then the tech coordinator average salary was 54. And so at the last discussion, I recommended we go 55. And then with a range going where the end user was a 46, I thought, well, it was fair to go 50. So only base the recommendation on what I found here. I mean, there might be other, things we could use or look someplace else, but this really is what is reflected around the state, whether they're large districts or small districts, it really doesn't matter. And I would say that's pretty fair from even the North Country regional schools that I can access, but.
Bill, do you have any other?
No, I think it makes sense. I mean, we heard last week that this is an essential position and, David emphasized that again this evening, so.
With the goal of potentially using the grants that have not yet been written or turned, or they're being worked on and not turned in yet. Is it problematic that we are getting is it good that we're now doing that, or is it bad because we don't know if we'll get the grant?
Well, you
What
want
happens
a
if we
job
don't get the
description
grant?
anyway,
Okay,
right? You want the job description and the range, you want that in place anyway.
okay,
And then we can see where the grants go and, once the grants are approved, if there's approval for a particular activity for a service from a tech specialist. It takes a lot of rationale and writing to be able to justify it. So that's the piece that needs to happen, as well as putting in, a myriad of other things that we have put in local budget that has decreased, and we need to put that in grants. So
so if we vote and say
I-
yes right now to the tech position with the number in it, what happens if we have to pivot and do it? What I'm not understanding is the motion we're voting on going to work for both scenarios? That's just my question. How does this work?
I can't think of any reason why it wouldn't at this point.
Okay. All right.
But I know what you're asking, because, yeah,
Okay.
from what I know, from what I think I know, for tonight, for where we are, or whether you approve it in January, doesn't matter, but for this point in time, I think it's good.
I think because it's December, it would be better to not delay, although, having a lot of information is very helpful. And I know that I have said it's better to have more information than less when we've been surprised by things at the last minute, but it's mid-December. And we support
So,
the position.
is there any other questions or comments or requests for deferring the vote?
I guess I'll ask again, so if the job description is approved, then, and funding comes through, then it's posted? Or what's the?
No, I think I
process?
would come to you first, on that, so you're aware of it.
So if you're coming to us again, then what's the harm in waiting on the job description? If we have to, is there anything else that's happening in the meantime?
It just eliminates one more step that we worked so hard to
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah.
We can check it. Okay, job description's in place, ready to roll.
Right.
If we wait until, we get funding approval for a particular activity for a position or supplemental salary for a position, and it doesn't get approved, now we have nothing,
Right.
so.
So I would like to call the question. All in favor of approving the job description at the current recommended salary of 50 to 55K, please say aye. And all opposed? So Greenway opposes, everyone else in favor, and Vince is not here. So the motion carries. And I guess we will talk then further about the next steps at a subsequent board meeting. Correct? That's what I.
Yeah,
that's
when
what
we're
I
further
said.
along and
When we're
what
further
direction we
along.
can take with grants, if anything, and then whether you want to try to put out for the rest of the year some sort of contracted service, because you can't afford it otherwise. Unless something happens within the budget that frees up a lot of money. So that's the catch, is the funding.
So with that, maybe we can transition to budget talking.
Okay.
Wait, there's a note in the.
Again, I want to apologize that the summary that I normally do by sector, I didn't get to do because I did not realize late this afternoon that Janet had uploaded the budget to the drive. But I don't get a notification. I had called to say that she was still working on it, but she didn't know she needed to let me know so that I knew it was there. So I will have this complete for tomorrow night and I will send copies to everybody. But I think we can have the conversation without that. So I just wanted to do it. And as we go into the conversation, with all that we're going to discuss right now, you'll see in Janet's updated budget, it is coming out at 3.09%, up from 2.8 from last week. So,
Sorry, can you give us a moment to, I didn't know it was uploaded either, so we have new information.
she uploaded the adjusted budget as a result of all of the homework questions that you guys brought up last week. It just
Look at the
uploaded
proposed
this afternoon.
Okay,
It would
so
be revised.
Yeah.
is it under the, like if I open the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
and you click it, it says proposed.
Yeah.
So you had a number of questions that you wanted us to go back and spend time on. And what I want to highlight in that this budget, and we'll probably talk about it at the end of the meeting to some degree in more depth than here, is that this budget assumes two leadership roles, an academic leader and a district leader. So the academic leader being sort of teacher-focused academic direction, educational outcomes, and parents, and the district leader sort of business, legislative, legal, building, transportation, and of course, parent community focus. If we opt to go in a different direction and end up with three positions, then we'll need to adjust our compensation, because right now what's in here is sort of what we had, and assuming that the same construct is going forward, because we haven't completed that piece, but that's how the budget is built currently. So I just wanted that as sort of a working assumption that we're having the conversation with. So one of the questions that came up was around an ALA district versus an ACA district, and ALA means a large district with over 50 employees. An ACA district is keeping employees under the 50 mark. And we're at the threshold right now, and there are ramifications to becoming a large district that we can't ever come back from. So it's a big decision to go that direction. And basically, I did a rough estimate for that so you can have a sense. One is sort of taking our non-union staff and sort of benefit numbers. And if we had to shift our benefits and retirement, what that looked like, and then sort of worst case scenario. So what is and worst case scenario. So what it comes out to be is a difference of about it, if it just sort of moved forward without sort of changes in who takes benefits and who doesn't, and adding some more family coverage than others, it would be about 143,000. Worst case scenario, 288. So it's a material cost to make this shift. And this gives you a range based on sort of what the snapshot is today versus worst case scenario if we went for it. So
That's roughly at the high end, that's roughly 3% increase.
yes, that's right. So the finance folks and Corinne, who've been, doing the homework, we highly recommend that we find ways to stay an ACA district, meaning under 50 employees. I think Corinne, intimated in a few comments earlier when she was talking about tech. And I think, do you want to talk now about some of the thinking, just so that they have some thoughts? Because I know you guys have been brainstorming with staff.
Well, yeah, I didn't brainstorm any punch list with staff.
Oh, okay.
On opportunities to explore in outsourcing or in contracting or in splitting cost with other districts. But put a total punch list together that included everything from business, HR, payroll, technology, and these are just, there's no rhyme or reason why, I'm just thinking of all the possibilities, and maybe they aren't, but didn't want to forget anything. Facilities, cleaning, in particular. My list.
Well, we had food service.
Food service, this
some of-
tuition grade 7 and 8. I mean, that I'm sure is not popular.
right.
But I mean, again, it's just a brainstorm off the top list for people to start picking it away and saying, well, what makes sense? What's going to cost us? What's more efficient in operation with an FTE? So those are the areas that I looked at. Special ed services. Can a couple, with another district, what could it be?
So there's gonna, obviously, right now, we didn't make any of those shifts in this budget, but it is something that could change the components of the budget going forward. Right now, in this, we have it built with the 0.4 language person, Spanish
Should be
teacher
added,
in
yeah.
it, which again is as an FTE, but that, based on all the moving parts, some of this could potentially shift. So the second area that we didn't have as much data and was asked to look at was facilities, because in this budget is sort of the ongoing day-to-day maintenance numbers, but there are other projects that need attention. And so Doug did go through a process and came up with a figure of 80,000 in terms of other work that needs to be done. Right now, we have allocated 33,000 out of the trust for some of that work, but I know there's overages already. So it may be that it's a going forward plan and built into next year. The recommendation from the group for consideration and discussion is that this piece of the buildings and grounds be a warrant article to be voted on a district meeting, because a lot of these costs are considered one-time costs and are not part of the day-to-day components. At the same time, I think it would then be a great process to introduce sort of a long-range building maintenance plan that aren't necessarily sort of the annual things, but things like, classroom might need work every, in cycles,
Yeah.
which allows us to build incremental funding into a trust over time that then would be spent out. Much like the town will do with new
The
police
vehicles,
cars.
the
and
vehicles,
Yeah, the
and they have
vehicles and
the-
things
the-
like
yeah.
that. So it's just a different way. And so what we came to is the concept that this should probably be warranted and not built into the operational budget. And be able to present also a concept for being more on top of it, because the wear and tear over time can be more costly than if we had a good plan in place. So that was the facilities piece.
Can I ask, related to the budget now, so there's a certain amount, like, which line item would that have gone in, I guess?
Oh God, Janet, what
So
lines would
we
these
have
fall
a
in?
renovations line. There's a building renovations line that should be at 0 for budgeted.
There's a risk though, right? To put
There's
in-
a risk because they could vote it down.
So would there be anything in there that is critical?
Well, there is one area that, again, I'd like to get a little more clarity, but it sounds like there are some windows in the second floor that are out of compliance and are a safety issue.
Yep.
So that might be the only thing, but that
That's
might be the
critical.
one thing that we could get done if we have room with the 33,000. I don't know. Because he broke out,
I have a list.
Yeah,
you
Jan
have,
has the
what
list.
were the
Includes
windows?
doors,
So
door
the
replacement.
windows,
And there was the doors,
the
right?
windows were 12,820. The doors were 14,254. And then he got an estimate for completely sanding down and refinishing the gym. That was 19,000. And then the cost of redoing 4 classrooms with carpets and tile and absolutely everything, redoing those 4 classrooms, that came to 45,241.
Yeah.
So it's a little over, like when I did the math, it came up to 91,000, but I think he was trying to round down, and I think he realized that he was gonna have to choose on certain jobs, so the total that I have is 91,350.
Okay. I only had what you had
Yes.
said, so.
And part of those 4 classrooms are some of the ones that were destroyed during, or
Were damaged
So
they were
during water.
damaged during the
They were
water.
water
damaged, but, and repaired, but not to a degree that
They were
is
like a
good,
temporary.
like
They
satisfactory,
were
yeah. You can
repaired for
tell.
temporary, yeah.
Janet, this line item you referred to, is that under buildings and grounds?
Yep, it should be right under the, and it could be
26.
that it doesn't show up because it's at a 0, but let me
No,
look.
it's there. It's under the 2,600.
Okay.
So it is under,
So it's
buildings
on
and grounds.
page 9,
Yep, it's on page 9.
and it says just buildings renovations, B and G, and you can see that last year actual, we spent 96,340 on that one.
Great, thank you. And then there is also just repairs to building,
Yeah.
and that's just a year-over-year maintenance.
Yeah, and it encompasses a lot.
Mhm.
There's a lot that goes into that, and
Because
maybe
it had-
anything from pest control to all those little things that happen all the time, fall into that one.
Which we had like double the amount that was budgeted for in the previous year.
Yeah, there was.
Was that the boiler?
Yeah, equipment repairs.
So, yeah, the boiler hit that line, under repairs to the building, yeah, for last year.
And if we had known that that would need to be, I mean, I guess you don't want to risk that in a warrant article, but it just wonder like, how much does this line item stay the same if we choose to put other more elective, optional items in the warrant article?
In repairs to the building. So I think it's good to separate it out, actually, because the repairs to the building line is really, those were emergency repairs, and it was also very COVID related and HVAC related, trying to mitigate for the pandemic. I think the hard part for buildings and grounds is the budget has remained stagnant over time. And the costs have risen, but now never been reflected or absorbed in the budget piece. It's been flatlined over time.
or cut.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's been
So-
cut.
Yeah,
And is that related, like what specifically though? I mean, some things could be flat and others might need to change. Right, I mean, are you talking about energy expenditures or?
But Doug is pretty
a
good
lot of
about
repairs
feeling
too,
that.
right?
Yeah,
Like
a lot of
windows.
repairs. There's been a lot
Yeah.
of broken things
Yeah,
in the last 2 years.
yeah.
I think he's finding broken things all the time. And much the same as technology, you go to use something and then it's not working, and you have to fix it.
I mean, even basics like redoing the gym floor a couple years ago
Yeah, but I
or
think,
last year. I
Yeah,
mean,
they didn't
that
do
came out of,
sanding, I don't believe. I think they just did a refinishing. from what I was
Exactly,
looking at.
exactly.
Now they're
Instead of taking
sanding,
it down.
relining.
yeah.
That's a
and-
much bigger process.
For sure, and my point is that that wasn't in the budget, that was paid for near the end of the year, right?
The
Because
refinishing.
that's just an example of, to the point of a lot of this stuff waiting and the budget being
Yeah.
flatlined,
Yeah.
the impact that it's had on
Yeah.
Does
the
that
building
mean,
and grounds.
are you saying, Phil, that was like, it was getting near the end of the year and that was deliberate, like,
Yeah, because
let's
there
get
was
this done?
surplus.
Okay.
Yeah, you knew what your bottom lines were.
Yeah.
But as we get tighter and tighter, there's a lot less
There's
wiggle
less
room to pull that stuff off. And
Yeah.
so it's more productive to have a plan.
Then
and-
surprises,
than
$80,000
It
in
ends up being
surprises
more
like we had
expensive
this
in the
year.
long run.
and a
So-
lot of stuff too is like safety issues. So we've had like, the trees need to come down
Yeah,
because
they had to be
they're
cut.
gonna cause damage to the roof that you just spent $185,000 on. I mean, all kinds of little things like that, which I think Doug has a great eye for. The safety and finding things that need to be addressed. I probably didn't answer your question.
No, I'm concerned that some of these things in the warrant article are safety related, you know. and-
Well, we don't know yet. There may be an element that gets addressed in this year, depending on I know there's overage, but we do have allocated 33 from the trust. So like the unsafe windows. And it could be that, when we present it as a warrant, we could present it like, here's the safety items, if you don't want to approve 80, we need 20 to ensure that, we meet compliance for, I'm not overly worried. I think it's more appropriate to have it broken out so people understand it. I'm not overly concerned that they wouldn't support it. I think they would like it because it's going to be more transparent and clear.
I mean, and it's hard to find, like, in this process to, like, it'd be great if we could have a line item that was just sort of, that could be broken apart and spelled out, and it changed every year, and it wasn't necessarily year over year, but
But the projects within
That
that
the
line would
projects
change
within it.
every year, yeah, which I think is what you're thinking about with the trust.
Right, that's why I
Yeah,
want to try to
plan.
make it a more
So you know
active
2
trust
years,
that
3
those
years
things
out.
are coming out.
Yeah.
And that there will be a line each year funding to the trust that will be
Yeah,
as a subcontext, and we could even have it in the town report so that they have the list of items that,
yeah.
Or
Certain things
pending
like
in the years.
exterior doors you'll want to replace on a
Right,
rotation,
right.
the windows are gonna all have to be replaced over time. You want to do 5 a year, 10 a year on a
Right.
classroom, you know what I mean, those
Yeah.
kinds of things is what I've asked Doug to kind of project out.
it's like what they'll do, like with the vehicles, you actually have a schedule, and so we could have the same kind of
Yeah,
schedule
it's a good
put
idea.
out.
Well, I think would be good to present to the people.
Yes, that was what we're recommending. If we agree. The next item that you asked us, I think, Kate, you brought this question up. This was around non-union pay raises. Janet, in the end, did a more complete analysis of the increases over time. And I think the key piece that came out in Janet's analysis is that the union is running higher than the non-union in terms of year over year increases. At union at 22.85% versus 11%. If we went with the COLA increase of 5.4 this year, it would bring the non-union staff up to based on her long-term trend to 16.4, more closer to sort of our other staff. But it is a key decision right now in the budget. It sits, I didn't have Janet change it until we had our conversation tonight. So the 5.4 is still in that contract. I mean, in that budget. So it is a fundamental. The other thing that came out, we learned that healthcare reimbursement that the school, or healthcare coverage that the school pays for the union staff is 92%, whereas the non-union staff is tiered at 87%. And so we weren't comfortable with the two-tiered benefit program, and so put parity in this budget to it all be 92%.
So that's in this budget right now?
That is in this budget right now.
What's the price difference?
It was, Janet, you
I
looked
think
at,
it was 5,000, I
Yeah,
didn't remember, but it was
5,000.
like $5,000.
yeah, that's about right.
And that's with current enrollment.
Yeah.
In the current plans that exist.
And obviously, yeah, it is 5. This all could shift as we look at FTEs and all of that, but that is what is currently in there. So we do need to make a decision because Janet needs to adjust the budget for whatever it is that we want to propose tomorrow night. I will add that Vince, just because I went through all of these items with Vince, this was an area that he felt that having it be more in line didn't matter.
We took up like the healthcare, or you wanted?
No, on the salary, and was willing to go with less. He also felt the same for healthcare as well. He was felt comfortable with a two-tiered system.
And Janet, you said the difference, I think that the number you worked through before, which is actually not, it was rather.
The
irrelevant.
$8,000 number I gave you.
Right, that was the difference between 4.4 and 5.4, right?
That's right.
Can you
So-
explain the, because I didn't get a chance to look at your updated staff increases graph, and I don't know, I don't recall asking for that, but I think it's helpful. So what are the numbers, the 16.4 under staff?
Oh, so actually, I'm glad you're asking me a question about this chart.
Okay.
Because I made a huge mistake last time, so I just want to say that publicly so that anybody who's out in the audience knows that I apologize for giving you guys bad information last time. I didn't do a proper methodology of figuring out the union increases. So, and the union brought that to me the day after the board meeting, so I just want to publicly apologize, because I don't want to give bad information if you guys are making financial decisions, and I don't want to create an impression in the community that is incorrect. So on this graph, this is the one you're talking about, right?
Yep.
So there's the three tiers. So the union is the upper one, and I think on your sheet it's red. So that shows increases over time. What I used for a method for the teachers, and I did go over it with the union personnel so that they were comfortable with it, because it depends on where you are in the grid as to how great your increase is. So I used the track 3, and the track 2, and then I averaged them out, and I did it over time. So the first 3 years is one contract, and then as you see it drop down to the 2.04, that is where the new contract negotiation came into play. And then the next grid, and the grids now are not linked to CPI. So in the original 3 years, those grids were linked to CPI, and the new grid was created each year. And the last 3 years, the grids are fixed, and were negotiated in that way.
And so your number, like your staff at 16.4, that's the increase over the years that are presented here.
So the union line which is the red line, over time, the total amount of increase is 22.85. The staff line, without that 5.4 increase in the last year, because that was the variable, staff overtime had increased 11%. And then the 5.4 brought it up to 16.4. Does that make sense?
Yes, but CPI is not included in next year because we don't know what it will be.
That's correct. CPI, I took the October to October, that's the latest data available. And I went, each year, I looked at October for 1 year, October for 1 year. So that's how I pulled that. But yeah, it won't be ready until next October.
So the CPI number, if we're just looking to align it, will be a bit higher for looking at from this year, this range of years.
Yeah, so
Yes,
if you're looking at the
year-over-year.
CPI and the
Yes,
staff
you're correct.
increases would have been fairly level
Mhm.
going forward.
Mhm.
It's just missing that last year's data.
So this is an important decision point for the group in terms of what goes into the budget. As I said, right now, the 5.4 is sitting in the budget. So maybe let's focus on that and then we can do the benefit piece, just so that we're staying clear. What are people, given the data, I guess first, are there more questions?
I'm just wondering where we came up with all the previous year's increases and what was driving out those increases
So for which group?
for the staff increases.
So that was determined by the district administrator and that was brought to the school board. So he would discuss it and then come up with a figure and then bring it to the school board and then present it to you guys and you would vote on it.
Is it based on CPI or, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out what our benchmarks.
I can't answer that. I can't.
I think.
We were using Northeast CPI, which the 5.4 is consistent with.
So all the previous years. were
We're using the
CPI.
same data.
Yeah, that's the data that would be launched from. Sometimes though, it got cut.
Well, it's hard
Yeah.
to determine.
Even
'cause
though it was there originally.
Right.
It was an area that could get cut. You know, the LEA, you can't, there isn't, that's a multi-year contract. So that's a fixed piece. Sometimes that would be a place that we would go and take out little bits to try to make it, the budget work. Or it did in my day anyway.
Janet, could you give us a little history on why there is this difference in the healthcare and the benefits, the current enrollment?
Yep, so in the last contract negotiation with the union personnel, there was quite a bit of negotiated variance in each individual tier or track. And then there was also a variance between steps. And when a staff member would reach the top step in the last grid, the grid that's this year, and I think last year's grid, they actually went down. So instead of receiving a raise in that last year, their salary went down. And I believe part of the negotiation process was to increase the contribution by the employer to benefits in order to compensate the employee for the loss of revenue through salary.
I think that was part, as I recall, part of the negotiation, as you're saying, in addition to the 403B
Right,
change as well.
yeah, there were other changes, but that was why the benefit itself changes. And it was over time. So in year 1, it was 90%, year 2, 91, year 3 and 4 at 92. We're in year 3 right now.
And it won't get higher than 92, that's what they negotiated?
That is correct, but you'll be renegotiating the contract.
In a couple of years,
Yeah.
right?
Next
Yeah,
year.
Next
yeah,
year.
Next year.
Oh, next year?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
do it
'cause
the
you have to
last
do it a year
year.
ahead.
Okay.
Do it a year.
I think historically, the benefit lines were always the same. And in this last contract, it created a difference, and so we have to make a decision. But if we could stay with the raises first. And then we can come to the benefit piece. That would be great.
The 5.4.
So the difference between 4.4 and 5.4 is 8,000.
Yes.
And then the difference with the.
So
health
every
benefits is
percent will
5.
be about 8,000.
Mhm. And it built into this current budget is the 5.4.
The 5.4 isn't sitting in the current budget, correct? Because I didn't, it's a lot of work for Janet to go and change it. And since we hadn't had the discussion,
Right,
it wasn't
no,
worth.
So I think that, you know, and so we compared the 4.4 to 5.4, and the 4.4 over the 1.5 is roughly 3, so this is like a 4% raise overall. Is that math correct?
Wait a minute, I didn't.
So what's the percentage increase over last year? So it's up,
5.4.
5.4.
so it's 5.4 up from last year.
Yes,
Yes. Last year's increase was 1.5.
Okay.
So it was really a decrease, like it from the prior year. It was a 1.5 increase, but
Increase
the
is
rate
decrease.
Yeah.
And 5.4 is at parity with CPI.
Mhm. And in the New England CPI. Is that
yes,
right?
it's a New England area, yeah.
Anybody have any specific thoughts or?
So are you guys
straw
just looking
poll?
for, that
well,
sounds
you
good,
either
or-
support what we've put into the budget, what we recommended.
Yep.
Or you come up with another number and we discuss it and
Decide.
decide.
Right,
And
Yeah.
so this is like just so I know, like if we had seen last year's budget and what those numbers are, and they're probably in here, and just to compare it to, that's a $40,000 increase. If we're going 8,000 every 1%.
Say that again. Oh,
If it's around
Um,
8,000 every 1%, I'm just, just trying to, if we don't vote on individual line items, and this is an individual line item, so we're just kind of looking at what the overall impact to the budget is year over year, and that's.
Well, right,
8,000
it's 8,000 to the overall budget.
in the difference between 4.5.
right, 1%.
Right, 4.4, right,
1% increase is
yeah,
equivalent to
it's
about
8,000
$8,000.
to the overall budget,
So it's
not,
like,
not the staffing. The staff increase is 5.4.
percent.
Right, but there's a lot of other items in the budget, so the overall hit is.
For this particular line is,
Yeah, so it's a combination of
5.4
not just the
times 8.
salaries, but it's the taxes and all the benefits that go with that. So it's the 403B, it's the difference, the variance between the
Yeah.
two.
Correct.
Sarah, you have any thoughts?
no, I'm taking it all in,
Well, we have to make a decision.
So
I'm with it,
Okay.
got it.
I actually like the idea of the 5.4. However, knowing that there is the health, the benefits were negotiated as part of the CBA, I feel like that's a change that I don't know, I'm okay with having the tiered approach with that. To keep that, to keep to keep non-union at 87%.
Right, I wasn't asking for that piece yet.
I
That's
know,
just-
but I'm taking them together because
I
I
see,
feel like
I
if
got
it's-
it, I got it.
if we do the 8, if we do the 5.4, then we don't do the 92. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of as a give and take.
Got it, now I understand.
Except that isn't it hard to, I don't know, I feel like like Lyme is a town that is a bedroom community to Dartmouth Hitchcock pretty much with all these medical workers. And why are we not giving a good health or a health benefit that has equity?
Partially because the CBA specifically negotiated that as a benefit.
Right?
And so I think that keeping that, I don't know, in my mind, it honors that a little bit.
Well, I
That makes
understand it
sense.
honoring the union negotiated
Right.
contract, but it's not like they deliberately negotiated a lower rate for the non-union people. It just didn't, Elizabeth just offered that in the past, it was parity in the past.
Yeah,
So
it was never.
this was
different.
a new change and we left the non-union people behind with the change. And that's all. That was a decision made last year.
Right. Well, we're making. So
And then we're gonna be faced with it again, but I'm just saying that was an interesting,
Do you remember
decision.
why you guys did that? Or maybe we can go back to the minutes. I wasn't here.
For what?
Like, well, like, I understand that the CBA negotiated, but like, I doubt that they negotiated specifically to have a two-tiered system. Like, they, you know.
No, they were negotiating.
I
on
think
their
it
own
was-
back.
Yeah, they're
the-
just negotiating on their behalf, and so in the past, there was always equity between union and non-union. So if union paid 87%, right, non-union members got the 87% as well, or I might be saying that wrong. And then last year, or whenever things were renegotiated by the CBA, it went up to 92 for them. But then there was no bring up for the non-union staff, and so that seems, unless I'm misunderstanding something, that's different than how it was always done in the past. And I guess I just wonder why you got, like,
But it was
I just
also
don't know if
with
you
a
remember
decrease
why.
in their salary, right? So it wasn't just a clean
I
increasing
see.
more. There was. a
But it
decline in their
wasn't- but it
salary as
wasn't
well.
all-
so the union staff took a decline in salary to get more benefits.
Not all
and
of
so
them,
there
right?
was no.
Well, that's where they
It
were on
depends
the
on where
track.
they
It
were.
depends on where they were on the track.
Yeah.
It wasn't across the board. This is the
That's,
complex.
that's
that
what- but
was
that's
what I
the
was
nuance,
just like, I
but
think
that's the
Janet said it to the
difference.
top one, it affected it, but that doesn't
Right,
mean
but
it
when you
affected
look at
all
what
of
their
them.
overall increases to the non-union people, they're tracking ahead across the board.
The non-union staff.
No, the union staff, they're over this time frame, they're up 22.85, and the non-union are at 11 or 16 with the 5.4. So it's not like the non-union staff were sitting pretty, and so you didn't need to
Right.
have their benefits have parity. I mean,
Mhm.
I think
No,
you
no, no,
don't-
yeah. Yeah.
Corey?
Did I just add a comment? From experience, non-union staff is often, if there's anything left type, then they might get a little. And it's the group, whether you're a custodian, food service, para, office assistant, you're asked to do a multitude of things at the drop of a hat, and you gotta jump through the hoops. So that's that pool of non-union people, because they don't have the luxury of a negotiated contract. I mean, they could, I suppose, but there's still no guarantee they would get what they deserve. So I just have to feel like I want to advocate for them because I know what they go through every single day. And I know, like I said, they help out here, it's there, there's nothing that's consistent sometimes in their world. And if you have the opportunity to be able to improve morale and make it right for the 5.4 and the 92%, then I say you move forward, because next year might be a totally different year. The union people will negotiate a contract. Who knows what the raise or benefit will be? And there might not be anything left to go back to this non-union group. You might be back at a 1.5. So I just want to plug that however you decide. So.
You're saying the raises.
May I just make a comment? This is Mickey.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, so I just want to put things in perspective. Last year, when it was decided the 1.5% and that was equitable with whatever the teacher cost of living increase was, that to a para was 16 cents an hour that they got last year. I don't know about you all, but I feel like my cost of living went up way more than 16 cents an hour for everybody, but that's their 1%. So when we're talking about 1% for a para, it's so different 1% for a teacher, right? So what we have, and the other difference is that teachers automatically get a step every year because they're more valuable every year. Paras don't ever get raises. When we're talking about raises for having more experienced people or people that work well in the district, we're only talking about cost of living increases for them. And the cost of living has gone up so dramatically that that I'm sorry, I lost my point. I just wanted to put that into perspective that that we're talking about cost of living. I did a comparison for para rates around the state, and while we used to be competitive, we are not competitive. We're not. And so to have, you know, the highest paid or close to the highest paid teaching staff and to not have a competitive para wage, that's where I'm looking at. My recommendation to Corinne was to fix last year's disparity. And so I was recommending 8.5% increase to Corinne. She went with the cost of living for the town. So when I hear, you know, that there's a question of even giving them the cost of living increase or anticipated cost of living for a group of people that is feeling underrepresented right now and thinking, you know, do we need to unionize? What do we need to be to feel valued as foundational to the functioning of the school? That I think they deserve cost of living increases. That's all I'm going to say. Thanks.
Thanks,
you.
Vicki. So do we feel like we're at a point we can make a decision? Would somebody
That would
like
help
to
in
put-
going to the town tomorrow, really, if you decided those two things.
So
Do you
it's
just
not
need
an
a straw
official
poll
vote.
of like, yeah,
I
let's-
know,
We
I
don't
just
need an
need,
official
yeah, I
vote.
need your guidance,
So-
because if we need to make a change, this is what the
It's gonna change
committee
the
is
bottom line.
recommending and with Corinne, but if it's something different, we need to know.
I think
So-
the 5.4 makes sense, just, I mean, this is my opinion, and also this is to Mickey, or maybe Corinne, like, I have been wondering, especially after listening to the staff here, but that WBUR report that came on a couple days ago. What are, like Mickey just mentioned that she called around or did a study, like, what are the standard practices in New Hampshire about paras? Why do they not step? I have many questions, that is all, and I would like to know more, and I don't need to know it tonight. But I want to know more. I want to know where Lyme falls in comparison to other schools and other practices. So I'm interested in that, Mickey.
Anyone else?
I agree with Sarah. I think for time being, I mean, the 5 point, I mean, if we're recommending the 5.4, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on board with it.
Kate?
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with that. I just would like to know, where do I see that in the budget?
It's gonna be a lot of lines.
It's gonna be in
Separated.
salaries, yeah.
Separated out under special ed and otherwise.
So it's gonna fall under staff salaries. It falls under staff salaries instruction. It will fall under staff salaries, elementary special ed. It's gonna hit the buildings and grounds lines for all staff.
There's a lot of lines.
Yeah.
Wait, it sounds like buildings and grounds?
So it
Yes,
sounds like
but they're not
5.4 is,
Oh, sorry.
Every
I was like, maybe
non-union
the pairs
employee.
are outside. your
No,
building
it's
and
more
grounds.
than the pairs.
Okay,
well, so moving forward, it sounds like the 5.4 is agreed upon.
Yep.
And is there any other thoughts on the?
Yeah, do we have it? That was my next question.
You mean
Are you
about
guys
the
gonna
health
vote the
stuff?
5.4? Because usually you vote the staff increase.
Well, so you want it as a vote?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will move 5.4.
I can second that.
Thank you.
Or.
Do you want to call that
So
question?
sure, all in favor of the staff increase to the 5.4 increase? Okay, it's unanimous.
Okay, now, the 92% to be in parity with that, I would like to move that.
Second.
Thank you, Phil.
Moved by Glenshaw, second by Varda.
Further discussion.
Do we have any further
discussion?
discussion?
All right. So
Well, I guess I'll say I agree with the 92%. I don't see why it should be different, but I just want to give voice to it at the same time, like something's gonna have to give here.
Yes.
You know, so. Right, so, I mean, but I'm in favor of the 92%. I don't think there should be a difference in a tiered system.
I agree with Jen on that completely, but that is our job to figure out what needs to get.
So we need to, we just need to. Analyze that.
So all in favor of a 92% across the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
We got it.
Motion passes.
Appreciate it.
All right, so the next item that was the homework, which we actually talked a lot about at the beginning, was around tech. Right now, in this budget is the tech specialist position, the library media specialist, and 10,000 for consulting work, along with sort of the line items that you all got before. I will say, I just wanted to say here, Vince had a lot of questions on this part. Isn't necessarily in support in the direction, doesn't believe that we need all that we're discussing.
In terms of tech.
And does
In
this
terms of
again
tech?
fall in one place? Is it all under SAU admin? Is it somewhere else?
So
All gonna fall under
I
1100.
didn't send out the tech budget. That
Oh,
had
you
been
didn't send
Yeah,
that
that's what
out?
I'm
Is
not-
that
I'm
in
not
that?
been shared with everybody.
Okay.
Definitely, I
Um,
apologize, I should have.
But
done
does that fall
I'm
under
sorry, well,
different
I thought it
places
was,
too?
when you uploaded, I thought it was out.
Yes.
That wasn't
Yeah, it
out.
wasn't
Okay.
in one of the folders for
Okay.
today.
There's line items under 1100. And they're pretty
So we should just
specific. It's
upload
tech
that.
equipment, online services, software. Falls in under there. The wages would fall under there.
So that's like pages 1 and 2?
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, he wasn't asking to sort of stop the progression of the budget, but I think at some point, I know it seems like we're hitting our heads, but it would be great to have another opportunity to just have a broad conceptual conversation around the direction that tech is taking in our educational construct, K-8. I recognize a lot of work has been done and a plan, but maybe we can set a time that is the case. You know, I'm passing this on because
Yeah, there are two distinct parts. The tech integrator is working with
Right.
classroom
right,
instruction.
Yeah.
And the specialist is doing the infrastructure, so to speak.
and you know, this is where he sees a blossoming cost to the district, and is it really all necessary? And so I'm just bringing it forward because that was what came out when I went through all of this with him yesterday. And then the
Are
other
there
piece,
particular line items that were discussed?
no, it wasn't around the line items, it was more the direction. He philosophically has some questions, and it may be that he,
Did you send it out? Do you remember who sent it?
I've
I'm trying to
given
find
it
the email.
to Corinne. I don't know if it's been sent out to the school board yet.
No, I was on it, I got it
Yeah,
from
What are you
someone,
talking
but I
about?
just don't know
We're
who.
talking about
oh, wait a
the
minute,
tech-
I
the
got
tech
it, well, I
budget.
mean, I think
I'm
I
not-
can get it, I think I can find it.
I'm not sure where the tech budget is at this point. The one that I sent you, has it been sent to the school board yet? I don't know.
No,
We
it has not been
incorporated
sent.
it in the.
Yeah.
It's built into the budget.
23, yeah, that one.
And
Um,
certainly,
We just rolled it in.
No, I haven't.
I think it is an excellent question that Vince is raising. Philosophically, where is the district heading with technology? And I would love to have that conversation with whoever would like to meet on that and discuss that, because that's the same thing as we were
It's
discussing
planning.
what the
Here, I
tech
got
plan
it.
looks like,
Yeah, I
what
found
that
it.
job
Okay.
description looks like. I would love to have that discussion to see where we want to head.
And maybe that's, you know, I mean, to the communication standpoint, I think it would be a great conversation to do a forum,
Mhm.
because I think the community should hear it too, because I think, you know, I'll say, I'm an old fart, I'm a Luddite, I don't understand all these things. I recognize the importance, and so I'm
Mhm.
trusting those that are in it in a more sophisticated way than I am. But I think it would be great to do a presentation, because I think, you know, it's like when somebody said, what is it? Education, just the reading, writing, or arithmetic kind of thing. And, you know, today's world of shit, well, technology is one of those places. And so it might be, and then it doesn't eat up all the board time, but everybody from the board could come. And if there was further conversation, then we could bring some of that back from a strategic level. But I think it would be a real benefit. And maybe if you're willing, that would be.
And
awesome.
then there's a tech committee that meets once a week, every other week, depending on how busy we all are. That's the thing that you guys are always invited to the tech committee.
Yep.
But if we want to do a forum, I think that's an incredibly great idea. Because then you can talk about it. And if there are naysayers, let's talk about what it is that you feel like we want to do, or where are we overstretching.
Yeah.
One of the things that I found is that there were some gaps in some areas that were very concerning to me when I came here. And I think they need to be addressed. If they're not addressed this year, then at some point they need to be addressed. But I think a forum is a great idea. I really do. And I would love to have Vince there, or anybody who would like to talk about, yeah.
The only other thing that I will say, I mean, obviously employee numbers overall was one of our homework items, which we again introduced. It's not built into this right now, but it will be for our second iteration. The other thing that Vince did bring up, I'm looking at my notes back from my conversation, just because I'm trying to have them at the table, is that we spend a lot of time deciding what we are doing and want to be doing, but he's not getting a feel for what we're not continuing to do. So, you know, as he sees a budget growing and bigger, you know, what are the things that we're letting go of or not doing anymore? It'd be great to have a feel for that. It may be in there and it may be built in, even though the numbers are going up, but I just wanted to pass that along. I think I was able to get into a very good conversation with him on that, and he had a lot of questions about different trends and things like that, and it was productive. But I wanted to, that was a question that came up in our conversation that we spent some time talking to. So with that, I think
There's also some things that, going back to last year, that were decided to stop being funded, like the design lab, that have been restored in the
Right.
budget. So
correct.
it's not only a question to what we need to stop doing, it's also a question of what we may have stopped that needs to restart.
Well, right, he was,
Especially to
he said
align
he
with
felt like we were,
educational-
he loves the design lab, by the way, and he
I'm not
was
surprised.
glad to have it enhanced and
Well, it's a
other
good-
things.
It's a good time to reference the strategic plan.
Right, and so we did go to that and talk about that, but absolutely right, Phil. So those were the homework items that we have. And as I said, that brought us, with everything that we discussed, basically took it from 2.8 to 3.09. Did I get that right? 3.08, 3.09.
So I think it would be helpful for all the board members to see that.
I emailed it.
She just
sent it.
uploaded it.
Um,
She thought, I thought it was there. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, and how, because, you know, when that gets sort of sucked into the budget, it's really hard to see and to understand.
Yeah, this is actually really spelled out, which is nice to.
Yeah, it's
Understand.
very detailed.
And so, but for this conversation tonight, it'll just have to be a future conversation, right?
correct, yeah.
But I also wonder, you know, as tech is becoming its own sort of entity, like with its own nervous system, right? That it might need, I wonder how, at what point do we separate that out as a section in our budget? You know, because a lot of these sections have tech incorporated in them, you know, and it's hard to digest this, the way it's separated
Yeah,
out.
and that was brought up at, I can't remember, somebody else, I think you asked me that a while ago, and why it isn't separated out. I don't think it was like considered a program in its own right, because a teacher was actually doing that as part of their job.
Mhm.
So, and taking care of all that other stuff, so I think, and maybe that's something that we can move.
If it lived in library, I mean, does anybody see it going in library?
Why can't it
No,
just
it
be
can have
that?
its own.
It
yeah.
should have
It could
its
be
own
its own
category.
thing. It's a
Yeah.
newer thing. It just needs to be its own.
Yeah.
And so I think that would really be helpful to understand it from a more holistic perspective,
Yeah.
rather than just seeing, bits and pieces,
Yeah.
Of it. And
You know, they're totally
Well, it's a piece that was inevitable.
Yeah,
right,
sort
and
of.
I
it's
just
now
have to make all the
time to
rules.
have it be its own,
That- I
set of
agree.
numbers. I
And
get
that
what you're
is-
saying.
I
I
have
think
one
that's
quick
right.
question
Yeah,
about the
that's
food
a
But,
service.
right, but they would make sense.
I thought there was still a big question mark about food service
That's
next year.
20,000 is the transfer that is always done. If you go, there's
Okay.
another section. So
So I'm looking at the wrong section.
Yes.
Okay. Which one should I? be
you
looking
should be
at?
at, food service is, was it 3,100?
37, yeah, 3,100.
3,100. So page, what's
So I was looking
Page
at
10.
page 10
And 11.
and 11.
10 and 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
So see it at the
Oh, I see
bottom?
there, food service. Okay, so that 20K is just.
That's the transfer.
Okay, because I was like, there's no way that that's.
Yeah, no, you aren't gonna eat much.
You aren't gonna eat much for that 20.
Crickets, rats.
can you explain what our timeline is and when I didn't, give you any homework because I hadn't had a chance to comb through this yet, but I have since.
You have more homework.
I have just general questions.
Okay.
and,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's for now or do
So,
I?
yeah, no, that's fine, give it, because tomorrow night, we have to go and do the first presentation to the budget committee, because that's what we're up.
First,
But
first
we're-
meeting with the town.
Yeah.
But we're still a total work in
Still
progress, so,
massaging.
so.
Yep.
Homework items, things that you want more, this is the time, because
All right, yeah.
we will
I'm saying
then
it.
be able to meet,
Yeah.
incorporate those, have conversations, because then we're gonna have to go back again.
Do
To
you
the
want me to
town, so.
email them to you or to the finance committee or just?
Yeah, just email
bring
them to
them
me
up?
and I'll make sure
Yeah, and then
everybody
they'll get
gets
to the
them.
budget committee.
Yeah,
and
they'll
then-
get to everybody, just email them
Because
Email
we meet
to-
often.
to me.
Right.
Man.
We
often.
meet often
We
and
meet often,
discuss.
so it's good to get those questions.
Yeah,
And
that'd
if
be
we get them
great.
in advance, then we can do whatever research
Yeah.
we need to do to get those
Yeah.
answers.
When do we get a response back on the grants that you are like full speed ahead on? Is it late in the process that we find out or?
It depends. I mean, traditionally, your allocations come out at the end of June, early July. People write those grants before the school year starts, so that when September rolls, your money has already been approved, but that has not occurred. Historically, it appears that money is spent first, and the state frowns on that, and it's definitely not a good way to operate. It depends, you've got a Title I, a 2, a 4, and an ESSER, and they all go to a different consultant.
Okay.
So their turnaround time might vary. Once they're submitted, I know Title II tries to get them reviewed and approved within 2 weeks. I haven't had any experience with the time frame on ESSER. But I know the contact person there. I know the contact person for all of them. So I don't know how it's going.
Okay.
That's the best answer I can give you.
Okay.
Hopefully within 3 weeks of submission. They're usually pretty quick about sending a message back if there's something in error that needs to be corrected before, like you're missing this, you're missing that, this doesn't tie together. It really has to be built around plans. So, I don't know, I would think that we get approvals within a month's time.
I won't hold you to it. I know. I was just kind of getting.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I'm
just
thinking
pretty
about the budget
involved.
process. and
Yeah.
When are we?
But I would recommend definitely in the spring, to keep an eye on when the allocations come, and that the school team would start collecting the needs for the following school year, like the professional development should be planned in advance, far in advance of what their needs are, or, what school safety items they want to put in the next round, or technology, because there's some of that. So it's just better planning, but then when your grants are written and approved, you can start spending down that money at the beginning of the school year.
But we're already spending money that we don't have. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Yes,
And when you say the state frowns upon that,
Oh, it's a federal grant. You cannot spend $1 out of a grant until they approve it. So expenses then come out of the local budget because that's been the practice.
And then you kind of, is it like a shuffle system? Like, okay, it's coming out of local budget and then we'll
You'll be able to do
re-short
some of that.
Yeah, you
Okay.
could do that. Yes, we do that, but there are a couple things that are in Esther's. But the Esther's grant, I think that the Esther's one and Esther's two, they were pretty casual about the start date. I don't know how they're gonna feel about Esther's three. I'm keeping my fingers crossed
Me too.
because we do have money allocated there that we've been spending right along through the fall.
Okay.
And I'm worried about that part.
Okay.
And we have professional development that occurred without a grant,
Yeah.
and we sort of got a pass that if it happened,
Guarantee, but the plan was never.
after-
agreed.
So we have to submit the
Because
plan.
they didn't have a plan. And there were pieces
So
that.
they may say like, oh, you want to spend things, you want to expend a certain 3% X, but we disagree, the X doesn't.
Yes, that's a thing, but also they could say, well,
Okay.
you're
That's
asking
go ahead.
for non-public now.
You ready?
and
Okay,
then
so we're gonna go
in
to
September,
non-public.
and
Okay.
not-
Well, no,
I was
let
setting
it
up
go.
questions.
I know we have
Time out, we still have one last item that is in non-public. Can we finish up tonight's thing and then we can chit chat all we want about the grant?
Yes.
Touchdown.
Sorry.
Woo! Reel it in.
So, so we will be moving into non-public.
Yes, and I'd like to
Personnel
move that.
matters. So moved by Glenn Shaw, second by Greenway. To the public, thank you for joining us.